Welcome back to Flashpoint. We're talking about the housing crisis here in North Carolina. Simply put, there are just not enough houses for the amount of people who want to live here right now. And while a lot's been made about the problem, few have been able to offer any substantive solution. Agree or disagree, our next guest has a plan they believe could solve the middle-class housing problem right now in North Carolina. Joining us now is Theo Noller, representing Carolina Forward. It's a progressive think tank. Theo, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ben. Good to be with you.
So this week, your group released what it's calling its middle-class housing plan. And you say we got to build our way out of our current housing shortage. Every time I speak to a Charlotte City leader, they talk about affordable housing being our biggest issue. But building our way out of the shortage sounds simple, but it's not. Explain.
Yeah, so when we think about housing problems, there are three issues we think about: supply, stability, subsidy. Briefly, supply is we don't have enough homes for everybody who needs them. Constraining that supply drives the price up. Stability is once you're into a place, can you afford to stay there? And subsidy is, do we have homes that are affordable to people who are making, less than the median income in an area? To solve the supply problem, there's really two things that we have to tackle. We have to tackle the cost of construction and the cost of loans, and we have to tackle permitting and regulation. And this plan is trying to address the supply side of that equation, where we're trying to make sure that we get homes built at a rate that ensure people have a place to live who need it.
Let's talk about, because I know a big part of this is zoning, and which you say that and people's eyes glaze over, but it is such an important topic that people have got to pay more attention to. Here in Charlotte, just this past week, some of our city leaders revisited the UDO, is what it's called here, that they passed last year, looking at increasing places that duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes can go around town. It does raise issues about traffic and overcrowding, but that's the sort of thing that you all are talking about when it comes to zoning, correct?
Yes, definitely. What you can build where, which uses are approved on what kinds of land, and how long it takes someone who wants to build to go through an approval process. A lot of times what we have is the only thing that you can build by right, that is to say by default, without going through a special approval process, paying extra fees, et cetera, is single family homes. And that contributes actually to sprawl. It contributes to inefficient infrastructure that's actually more expensive on your tax base. It contributes to our traffic problem because we're spreading things out over a larger area. What we're looking for is ways to incentivize people to build denser housing and to be able to do it more cheaply and more efficiently than some of the alternatives.
Because having talked about this before, single family housing, I know it's the American dream of having your one house on one lot, but for one, that's not everybody's American dream, and for two, it's making neighborhoods more expensive, and for three, a lot of people don't realize that laws in a lot of towns are automatically defaulted to that sort of housing.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the things that make building houses expensive. You went over some of them: materials and labor, and borrowing. Limited what we can do as far as materials and labor, but part of your solution is on the borrowing and financing end. Explain that.
So the issue that you run into, right, is if you want to build housing, if you want to build any kind of thing, you're going to need to take a loan out. And when you take a loan out, you're going to pay interest. The idea behind our plan is that we can bring those interest rates down if the state would secure, let's say, 75% of the loan. That means that you can attract investors who are willing to take on a lower level of risk, whether those are institutional investors like a bank or a government, or whether those are private investors looking for, bonds of some sort or other low risk vehicles. When you do that, when you bring those interest rates down, you're able to get more units for the same amount of money. And if you're able to get more units for the same amount of money, you're creating more housing. You're incentivizing people to enter the process. It overall is going to bring more housing online than an environment where it costs a lot of money to take out a loan.
And you say this is a taxpayer-friendly plan. Explain.
Yeah, so the taxpayers are not actually going to be on the hook for this, generally speaking. What happens is you have a guarantor fee that goes into the loan process. So first of all, the state is only guaranteeing 75%. That means that the investors and the developer both have skin in the game. They're on the hook if the project fails. They have a serious incentive for it not to fail. We've modeled this after a Small Business Administration loan, one that is very successful and where we have a default rate, I think, of 1% to 2%, maybe extremely low failure rate for projects that get this loan. And part of that is that you have this guarantee system where everybody who's taking out a loan like this is paying the loan guarantor this fee. That fee goes into a pot. And in the rare cases where somebody does default, that pot of money has been set aside from the private industry to cover the cost of that default. So the taxpayers are ultimately not going to be on the hook at all, functionally speaking, when those rare failures do occur.
All right, so let's say somebody hears everything you're saying, and they're thinking to themselves, that Theo, he is onto something. This sounds fantastic. All right, how do you get this in front of lawmakers, whether it be at the state level? I'm imagining the GOP majority in the General Assembly might not be as responsive to some of this, but maybe they would be. And if not them, in front of city leaders, whether it's Charlotte or Raleigh or Chapel Hill.
Well, Ben, first of all, I come onto your show, which everybody's watching, and the word is already out now that we're here. But, beyond that, I think there's a lot of different things we can do. First of all, things that happen in politics happen relationally. I'd love to point to the success that we had here expanding Medicaid, Medicare. We had a Democratic secretary for the health system who worked across party lines to get that passed. That benefits everyone. I think if we can illustrate that, look, this is a workforce development issue. This is about whether or not our businesses and institutions have workers who live close enough to the place that they work that they're willing to come in. In my county, in Orange County, here in Chapel Hill, most of our jobs are at UNC Chapel Hill, and 70% of the people who work in this county are commuting across county lines to get here. That's an urgent issue. Your Chamber of Commerce is interested. Your local government is interested. Your workers' rights groups are interested. The employer is interested. Everybody has skin in the game and says, look, we have got to figure out how to address this issue, or eventually we're going to get to a point where the juice is not worth the squeeze for somebody to work at my business or my institution, whatever that thing is, because it just costs too much to get a house there. Or frankly, they can't even afford. I mean, we've got people who are paying 50% of their income in rent here. I think roughly half of the renters in this town are paying 50% of their income in rent. So there's an urgent demand for solutions that cuts across party lines. What we have to do is say, look, we have an idea. We want to talk to people about it. We are willing to make compromises and figure out what works in different parts of the state and what we can do here, what we can do there. But it's not an issue that we can afford to sit around and twiddle our thumbs with, because if we do, things are going to collapse that affect everybody on all sides of the political spectrum.
Might be the first time the juice is not worth the squeeze has been mentioned on this broadcast, but our shout outs to Lizzo for letting us use it. All right, Theo Noller, representing Carolina Forward. Theo, thanks for taking time. We do appreciate it.
Happy to talk to you, Ben.
All right, take care. Up next on Flashpoint, seeking solutions for the unhoused. The group working to make sure everybody has the documents they need to succeed.